The year was 1983. A cotton trader, still in his early 30s, began to dream big. His aspiration was to become an industrialist. The venture he was about to embark on was uncharted territory for him. He knew nothing about cement, limestone, or anything remotely associated with it. In the era of license Raj, where everything from production to consumption was controlled by the government, Narotam Sekhsaria saw the huge potential in cement and its role in a growing nation. Trusting his instinct, he started Ambuja Cement and went on to create one of the most successful cement companies in the world. Told by the man himself, the Ambuja story is a tale of grit, determination, honesty, and integrity. For a cement company, it's a unique case study that broke many stereotypes, such as cement production can't be an environmental friendly activity. Oh, there's going to be a very interesting anecdote around this. Good cement can't be cheaper, another one for this as well. And it's difficult to market a product as boring as cement. A big, a big one for this as well. Narotam Sekhsaria's vision for Ambuja wasn't just limited to financial success. He undertook community development around all Ambuja plans to a whole new level. Ambuja's work in women empowerment, skill development, health and education created new benchmarks for the industry long before corporate social responsibility became mandatory in India. The Ambuja story provides a new perspective on business and life, inspiring the next generation of entrepreneurs to scale greater heights. Hey, it's Puneeth, and this is Galata. It's a new format. It's really hard to get big guests, and unlike the Ranveer Alabadias and Nikhil Kamats of the world, I find it hard to get big guests, so I decided to do something that both of them can't, to get guests that they cannot get, the eminent dead. I know this guest isn't still around, but then his story is worth sharing, and that is why I bring to you the story of Ambuja. It's unbelievable and autobiography, and I can't wait to share all the tidbits with you. Here's a letter that the daughter of the founder wrote about him. My father has the curiosity of a child. He starts the day with a walk, accompanied by his favorite music or a podcast. He carefully observes everything around him: fellow walkers, joggers, milkmen, newspaper delivery boys, birds, flowers on the trees, clouds, the sky. He doesn't miss a thing. He's always joining the dots. Doesn't follow just, he doesn't just Come on, do it properly. He doesn't just follow the daily weather pattern. He's continually analyzing what it means for agriculture and the economy, how it will impact the livelihoods of people and the last mile of rural distribution network. He observes the fitness bands and smartwatches on the wrists of runners and wants to know if this is a new trend in connected wearables and whether the trend is here to stay. Is it too urban? Is it very niche? Is there a possibility to make it affordable for a large number of people? Can it be made to serve a bigger purpose? Can it be part of a universal healthcare system? Once home, he reads the newspapers and makes notes in the margins that are addressed to different people at the office. All through my childhood, the newspapers I read at home had his markings. It is said that reading is a means of thinking with another person's mind, which is what you're doing here. In the case of Papa's annotated newspapers, you are thinking with the minds of two people. His interests are wide ranging. They go beyond the usual business, economy, markets, and politics into areas like music, literature, cinema. He loves Hindi films, by the way. Sports, he watches every cricket and tennis game he can, and very often food. He has a take on which tea shop at Veraval has the best khari biscuit and tea, which dhaba to stop at for kachori on the way to Chirava, and where to get the best pistachio tea cake in London. He is always seeking, continually discovering, and constantly sharing food tidbits. The newspapers travel with him to work, and his staff scans the articles with his notes and sends them to the relevant people. He is very prompt in reading and responding to every document shared with him and expects the same of you. Prepare yourself thoroughly before meeting him, for he engages with you methodically and rigorously on every topic. Whenever we discuss a new investment opportunity at our family office meetings, he will always have a question about what is this going to teach you. His curiosity is infectious, and over the years, his thirst for learning has become part of the DNA of everyone around him. He is of the opinion that even if nothing comes out of a discussion, one should have learned something from it. He always encourages us to study and learn from failure. Business schools, he feels, should focus equally on case studies of business failures as they do on successes. His energy and impatience are a potent combination that keeps everyone on their toes, both in the office and at home. He thinks so fast that the rest of us can barely keep up. He's just as focused on the execution as he is on the conception of an idea. He often leaves detailed instructions on how everything should be done. He's always open to hearing you out if you have a suggestion or a better approach to solving a problem. More often than not, you will find that he has carefully thought through every aspect of the issue, including the solution that was just suggested. I remember his cancer surgeon, and this is interesting. I remember his cancer surgeon, Dr. Shah, once laugh and say, "The only time I can have my way with your father is when he is under general anesthesia." Clarity of, and you will see this when I read the other highlights as well. He has his ways all the time. Clarity of purpose and courage of conviction are both qualities deeply ingrained in Papa. He will understand a situation clearly, come up with a plan in granular detail, and then proceed to implement it with surgical precision. I recall an instance where we had spent weeks preparing a bid for a company. In the days leading up to the bid, there was much chatter about how parameters other than those we had used could determine the winner. I wondered if we should have a relook at our bid document, but Papa would have none of it. He said we were clear on the fundamentals and our bid was based on it. Everything else was just noise and it should not muddle our thinking. Our bid went through and I learned the value of filtering out the noise. In a world where media is an endless scroll at our fingertips and there is so much fake news, the ability to shut out the noise is a gift indeed. Papa has always shunned mediocrity and pursued excellence. He leads by example and never gives up. In recent decades, with his speech impaired by multiple surgeries and radiation, he practices speech therapy diligently. Even at 70, he continues to conduct all his meetings and AGMs himself, making every effort to ensure that everyone understands him. He often says life is like a river. It has many twists and turns. You cannot influence its course, but you can learn to navigate it. And she continues, Papa is my rock. He has an immense reservoir of courage to face any adversity. No matter what the stress, he always shields our family from it. He has an incredible capacity to compartmentalize issues. He never makes us feel that we are getting in the way or interrupting him. He invariably finds time for the family, whether it is to take our calls on the busiest of days, take me out for coffee to catch up, or go on family holidays. He's never too occupied. He believes that he should be readily available as a parent and that both the quality and the quantity of the time he spends with us matters. Just before my 18th birthday, he had to leave for his first cancer surgery in New York. Despite being in tremendous pain, he told me calmly and matter of factly that it was just a minor medical procedure and that he would be back soon. On my birthday, 18 spectacular bouquets of red roses arrived at home. The flowers and fragrance filled my room, and I could feel his presence despite the distance. Papa is very spiritual and deeply philosophical, and he is a big believer in destiny. I have seen this during the good times and not so good. Everything happens for the best. There will be some good even in the worst of things that happens to us. You will get to understand it with time, is his favorite mantra. Talking of his illness, he once said to me, Cancer is the best thing ever happened to me. It has kept me humble. All the good work we did around cancer would never have happened otherwise. It was destiny. Cancer strengthened his eternal faith in the Almighty. Papa's beliefs are rooted in Vedic philosophy. To this day, he reads the Gita whenever he seeks peace or inspiration. According to him, life will have many ups and downs, and we go through adversity to savor the good times. It's like enduring a dark night to enjoy what the beautiful dawn has in store. Remember that everything in life is transient, so do not attach too much importance to the highs or lows. Both will pass. The best education I have had and continue to have is by being my father's daughter. For that, I will always be grateful. The story you just read, which I'm about to share with you in bits, The story you just read of his journey, his struggles, his philosophy, and insights from his life in his own words will, I hope, provide the future generation of businessmen and entrepreneurs some valuable learnings and influence them to follow a path of strong values even as they seek to fulfill their dreams. Every girl will tell you her father is her hero, and I'm no different. My father is my world, and I'm proud of how he has shaped my worldview with his thoughts, with his words, and his deeds. He continues to be my guiding light. October 2021, Padmini Sekhsaria. And I want to directly get into prologue because this gives you an instance of what it's like to be at the right place at the right time and get the right opportunity. And even if you do not have these going, if you have just one aspect of it going, you'll be able to trace and create the right aspects of other things. Like in this highlight that I have, it is amazing how just having the right people to bump into can lead you to the right opportunity, right place at the right time. Check this out. On a sweltering day in the summer of 1982, Suresh Nyotia and I flew to Lucknow to explore the possibility of setting up a cement plant in Uttar Pradesh. Suresh, who had arrived from Calcutta, was a relative and a mentor to me. We had come to Lucknow to meet Mr. Narayan Dutt Tiwari, the Union Industry Minister, to submit the initial proposal for the plant and to gauge the response. Mr. Tiwari had been the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh till a few years ago and retained considerable clout in the state capital. We were waiting in the lobby of the iconic Clark's Hotel on our way to the meeting when I saw a distinguished, tall, and fair gentleman walk in with a retinue of people. I recognized him immediately. It was Mr. N. Pai, the Chairman and Managing Director of Industrial Development Bank of India, IDBI, the country's premier bank for development finance in those days. I had known him well for a few years. He saw me and stopped. Narotam, what are you doing here in Lucknow? He asked. I told him about our mission. He looked slightly amused and indulgently told me, "You're wasting your time. If you're serious about investing, you should consider Gujarat." I was taken aback by his bluntness. "Sir, Suresh knows Mr. Tiwari well and we hope to get his support," I told him. He wasn't convinced. He reiterated that if we were serious about setting up a cement plant, we should consider Gujarat. He told us that he was flying to Ahmedabad that evening, and if we were to go with him, he would introduce us to everyone who mattered. Even if you don't know anyone in Gujarat, they will welcome you like a son in law, he said. It's fascinating because after bumping into Mr. Ananpai, Suresh and Narottam waited for hours to get just 2 minutes with the Union Industry Minister. And in those 2 minutes also, the minister just said, "Okay, pass the file to my assistant or secretary." And that just irritated Narottam. And he really considered going along in the evening with Mr. Anand Pai in the flight back to Ahmedabad. And as promised, the minute they landed in Ahmedabad, and they were received by this gentleman named Mr. H.K. Khan. He was the chairman of Gujarat Industrial Investment Corporation, which actually plays a huge role in the initial days of Ambuja, which I'll get to in a moment. He had come to receive Mr. Anand and Anand introduced both of them. And imagine the directness of this and the speed at which Gujarat government worked. It just blew me away. And this is the 80s, okay? Here's what Mr. Anand asked of Mr. H.K. Khan. "Khan, how will you make the cement plan possible for Mr. Sekhsaria?" Mr. Pai asked him as he waited at the coffee shop. "Sir, you need not worry. Tomorrow, after you meet the Chief Minister, I will make sure that his office issues a press statement saying Mr. Pai has brought Mr. Sekhsaria to Gujarat to set up a cement plant and we welcome the possibility of this investment," Mr. Khan said. "Once this announcement is made, Mr. Sekhsaria will come to my office at GIIC and we will work out a plan of action." It was only an hour after we landed in Ahmedabad, but the super efficient Gujarat government bureaucracy was already moving quickly, and quickly they moved. But here's the thing, right? At this point, Mr. Narotam Sekhsaria, the man that you and I are studying today, here's the state, okay? My knowledge about cement was next to nothing. I had never seen a cement plant in my life. I had no idea about limestone deposits or the cement industry in Gujarat, and I had never negotiated an industrial agreement. Yet, in the next few weeks, I would need to be ready for a substantive meeting with Gujarat government officials. And here's the thing, right? Um, Between HK Khan and the next day, a quick meeting with the chief minister, issue of the press release, it happened so quickly that Narotam realized that he has to now make a solid proposal and present it and get things rolling at the speed of Gujarat government. And here's where he was. I was still in my early 30s. He made good money, worked only a few hours a day, and that too for only 9 months of the cotton season, and often holidayed in India and abroad with my family. It was a comfortable work-life balance that I had earned. And his idea was to maintain the status quo, and the cement plan would be like an investment that he would make outside of the cotton business that he was doing. We're going to get into the cotton business as well, and then go through his journey of what I found as a highlight that just intrigued me. Here's a bit about Gujarat government that I had made a note of. The Gujarat government did not believe in wasting time. In less than a week, I received a formal letter from GIIC inviting us to come to Ahmedabad for more detailed discussions on the contours of the deal. Not only were they willing to help us with the land for the plant and the limestone mines, but they also wanted to invest in the project. It was much more than what I had originally expected. He didn't have the team, he didn't have the wherewithal, but it's amazing when he just had the right opportunity at the right time, met the right people, and got things rolling. And it turns out this was an amazing time to do this, because I'm just blew my mind, because Gujarat government not only supported them like this, but also became a joint venture, a partner for Narotam and he didn't have a team, he just had an idea, and his team to make this happen. To create a professional facade to go to his meeting, he had to take an experienced professional from MacMet Limited, another cement company. So there was a professional facade that yes, he already had a team in place. You can see how small and how inequipped and resource deprived he was, and still he was able to start riding a wave. And what a wave it's going to be. In a week's time, here's what happened. They laid out the details of the assistance that the Gujarat government and GIC would provide us. Their investment in the project would be equal to the amount of money we invested. They would be an equal partner and take all the risks that we were taking. Additionally, we would be offered several tax concessions and incentives. We were bowled over by their eagerness to have this project come up in their state. I had heard about states welcoming investors with open arms. Still, the Gujarat government had taken it to a different level. Indeed, they were welcomed as son in laws. Fate and destiny had brought me closer home to Gujarat. It was the beginning of the Ambuja story. And here's where we take a few steps back. Okay, wait, he's already an established cotton trader. How did that come about? We go into his childhood, and his childhood is a very typical Marwari childhood. Let's get into it. Who knew we could do so much so quickly? I still wonder sometimes. How did we, a bunch of relative newcomers, build India's most successful cement company in a little over a decade? We started production at our first plant in 1986, and by 1996, we had plants in 4 states: Gujarat, Himachal Pradesh, Maharashtra, Punjab. Gujarat Ambuja was, which was the name of Ambuja before it, um, in the initial days. Gujarat Ambuja was not the biggest, but it certainly was amongst the most profitable, most efficient, greenest, and most investor-friendly cement companies globally. How did we do this? As the founder, did I possess any exceptional abilities or skills? I do not think so. I was a chemical engineer who ran the family's cotton trading firm while dreaming about becoming an industrialist. Did I have extraordinarily qualified people working with me? Not at all. My colleagues were regular middle class professionals with technical degrees from India's small town universities who achieved extraordinary results through hard work, single minded focus, imagination, and creativity. Well, my highlight note for this is he called himself a Destiny's Child. And that was the title of the first chapter as well, Destiny's Child. And I agree with him, because it's amazing. It's like luck was always a step ahead of him, and wherever he kept his foot, he just got lucky. He just got lucky from an early age. Hear this out. The Marwaris, as is well known, have a unique talent for trading and business, a talent that they have cultivated and put to use assiduously over the centuries. An intangible factor, sometimes referred to as Baniya Buddhi, or I think we call it Baniya Buddhi, or the trader's mindset, has ensured them success wherever they have gone. From running local businesses to trading with camel caravans that traveled to India from Central Asia and beyond, to funding rulers throughout North India across reigns and kingdoms. The itinerant Marwari traders, moneylenders, financiers, and brokers have been involved in every money related activity throughout the history of modern India. Chirava and Navalgarh, which is where he comes from. So Sekhsarias, they are from Sheksar originally, which is part of Bikaner in Rajasthan. But where his family migrated to is Chirava and Navalgarh. Today, in modern day, it would be Junjunu district of Rajasthan. Um, Junjunu have, for some reason, historically produced the largest concentration of prominent Marwari business families. The Dalmias, for example, are from Chirava itself, while the Birlas are from Pilani, a distance of 17 kilometers. Navalgarh, um, which produced Navalgarh is where he's from, which produced the Goenkas, Khaitans, Podars, Kirias, Ganeriwalas, and Murarkas, is only 60 kilometers away. The Singhanias, Bajads, Mittals, Ruyas, and Sarafs hail from other nearby towns and villages. So Junjunu has played a humongous role. I don't know what's in the water there, but they have produced all of these established empires that we see today. All of them root back to Junjunu. A walk around Chirava gives one some idea of how prosperous it must have been in the 19th and early 20th centuries. The streets are still lined with magnificent old time havelis of merchant families built around that period. Most are in ruin since the descendants of the original families have abandoned them. A few, like mine, have been lovingly restored and are occupied at least a few times a year. Ornately carved hanging jharokas, window frames, carved doors, beautiful frescoes on walls and ceilings, and remnants of imposing chandeliers distinguish these palatial havelis that were once owned by the rich. Our spacious but relatively simple early 20th century haveli is indicative of our moderate wealth in that era. My forefathers were brokers and commission agents who dealt in commodities, including cotton, bullion, and oil. The Haveli built by my great grandfather was designed in the style of Shekhavati architecture prevalent at the time, with two stories and two courtyards, the forecourt or the Mardana, the men's courtyard, and the enclosed rear courtyard or the Zanana, where women were sequestered away from men, hemmed in by bedrooms on both floors. Our Haveli is strikingly bereft of the ornate embellishments of other Havelis in the vicinity. There are no jarokas, frescoes, chandeliers, or elaborately carved doors, which means they were well-to-do family, but not up there well-to-do. They finally decided to relocate to Bombay, following the footsteps of somebody that was like a torchbearer. Um, in so when they moved to Mumbai full time, in doing so, they were only following the illustrious footsteps of Mr. Govindram Sekhsaria, the first known person from the Sekhsaria clan to make it big in a large city. He was no relative of ours, but his rags to riches story is a legend among Marwaris. And here's his story. I wish there's an autobiography on this. I would have totally read it. A descendant of the Navalgarh Sekhsarias, he was born into a humble family in 1888. He made his way to Bombay at a young age in the early part of the last century. Using his skill at enterprise and speculation, he quickly rose to become the biggest cotton trader in the country, with memberships in the two biggest cotton exchanges in the world, Liverpool and New York. The legend about him in the Marwari community is that he would bring trunks full of cash to his residence in Marine Drive in South Bombay. He later set up several textile mills and dabbled in various businesses, including sugar, bullion, minerals, printing, banking, and even funding motion pictures. He died in 1946 at the age of 58. His stature was such that the cotton market and the stock market stayed shut that day as a mark of respect. He is now largely forgotten. Besides a few education institutions, his lasting legacy until recently was the Bank of Rajasthan that he set up in Udaipur in 1943. At one time, it was among the largest bank in the state with close to 300 branches. It was merged with ICICI Bank in 2010. Some of our families were related by marriage to those in the two upper rungs. So I would look at it this way: 19th century Bombay had like a very clear cut hierarchy. At the top were the industrialists. Next to them were traders who were doing like large scale trading, and below that were small scale traders, and below that were small businesses, shopkeepers, professionals who worked for the top three rungs. So in this hierarchy, Sheikh Saria family especially when Narotam was growing up, was in the third rung. They were small time business owners, traders. Some of our families were related to by marriage to those in the upper two rungs, but we were never on backslapping terms. The only time we met them was at weddings and at social functions. And in these social functions and weddings, it's usually just a hi bye, or we pretty much ignore it because we're drunk. Um, yeah, paisa bolta hai. We'll come back to this later. Narotam Sekhsaria was studying in a Hindi medium school, and his grandfather had a very clear logic: get all the kids through the school as quickly as possible. Now, this is a big Marwari family. In fact, I think he was part of nine um, kids. He had five brothers and four cousins, and he was the youngest of all, if I'm right. What happened to his family has happened across many families. What would happen is the family would stay in the native, probably Rajasthan or Gujarat, and the elders would travel to the trading hubs, Calcutta, Bombay, or Bangalore, Chennai, for a few months, and then they would be back, and they would be traveling and then be back. Usually, it would start the weekdays, the weekends, and then months, a few months at the trading place, a few months back in the native place. But what was increasingly happening was almost 9 to 10 months of the season was being spent by the elders in the Sekhsaria family in Mumbai, and that is why they decided to relocate the entire family to Mumbai. And this was a huge family. Like his grandfather Banarsi Lalji, his brother Satyanarayan ji, his father Narotam Nagarmal ji, uncle Makhanlal ji, and some of the elder cousins, and the entire family relocated to Bombay completely. And if you realize, now it is completely shifted after the relocation, where you would go, and it's usually just elders who would go back to the native village, in his case, Chirawa, probably for festivals or very, very, very infrequently. So the equation completely reversed. So when they moved to Mumbai, they were living in Pratna Samaj, which at that time mostly had Marwari and Gujarati business families inhabited around. Pratna Samaj was a solidly middle class area at that time. It was home to Gujarati and Marwari business families like ours because of its proximity to Kalba Devi, Mumbai's central wholesale commodity trading district. Our two-story office building was located at Kalba Devi, a few minutes away from the iconic Bombay Cotton Exchange set up in the 1930s. With five of us brothers and four cousins, it was a happy place to grow up. The joint family was spread over several floors, but all the kids slept together, probably in the hall. We all went to the nearby Marwari Vidyalaya High School, and his grandfather had this knack of just, you know what, education is not important. Get them through school as quickly as possible. So his way of doing that was, if the kid is 5 years old, put him in the fifth standard. If the kid is 7 years old, put him in the seventh standard. Just get through the school as quickly as possible, because the mindset back then was, which lasted even when I was growing up, early years of my school, was you won't learn as fast in the school as you would on the job. So get through the school as quickly as possible. Academics, in fact, the Marwari Vidyalaya was reflecting this thought of mind. Um, Thought of mind, yeah, this thought process. Academics was not Marwari Vidyalaya's strong suit in those days. The parents who sent their kids to the school did not insist on it, and the school did not oblige either. Teaching was geared towards somehow getting the kids to imbibe the basics to join the family business as soon as possible. For my family, though, it was a big jump from the school classes held under the banyan tree in Chirawa. My grandfather was a donor to the school, so he was given the privilege of deciding which class each of his grandchildren, my brothers and cousins, and I should be admitted. The concept of structured schooling, where children started school at the scientifically determined age of 5 or 6, was not known to him then. He used an arbitrary age criterion, and at age 5, I was enrolled in class 5. My brothers and cousins were dealt with in a similar fashion. This idea, as I said earlier, was to get the kids through school as soon as possible so that they could join the family business. My grandfather, Banarasi Lalji, the family patriarch, he had two sons and nine grandsons, but was worried about his younger brother, Satyanarayan ji, 25 years younger than my grandfather and touching 40. Good book. Satyanarayan ji had still not produced a male heir. As is well known in those days, sons were more desired in Indian families than daughters. This was particularly important for Marwari business families like ours. Sons were essential to help the father in the family business and then to take it over and finally to look after the parents in their old age. Daughters, on the other hand, were married off at a noticeably young age and sent to their husband's home. Adopting a male child to secure the family line and fortune had been common practice among Marwaris for hundreds of years. It was a practical solution to a problem that had blighted the Indian subcontinent since time immemorial. For many Marwari families, this created problems in taking forward the family business and hence the recourse to the custom of adoption. For obvious reasons, a vast majority of these adoptions happened within closely knit families, the most common of which involved uncles legally adopting nephews as their sons and heirs. Fortunately, in those days, most people lived in large joint families with lots of children, which mitigated the trauma of separation for both the child and the biological parents. Where adoption was not possible within the immediate family, the net would be cast wider into the extended family. Very rarely would it stretch to orphanages or child shelters. Narotam was adopted by the younger brother of his grandfather because every time the kids would visit the office, somehow Narotam would always go and sit in the lap of Satyanarayanji. And this created a bond between both of them. So when the time came to select which grandchild he would adopt, he chose Narotam. And this changed the trajectory of his life. As part of the adoption process, they moved to another house on Carmichael Road, which right now is like an exclusive neighborhood in Bombay. But back in those days, it was just a wooded outpost where not too many people wanted to live. So not only did he move to another house, but his school was also shifted. And in the entire Sekhsaria family, he was the first to go and join an English medium school. Now, understand something. They not only moved to a new house, they also changed his school. In the entire Sekhsaria family, so far in the story, he is the only child who moved the school and he joined an English medium school. And all of this happened because of the workings of his elder sister, who was senior to him by 18 years, his new elder sister. I should say, by 18 years. And she had, after her marriage, her in laws had encouraged her to study, and she had learnt English at home she had got a tutor and everything. And that led her to encourage her parents to get Narotam join an English school. Now imagine joining an English school and joining, like, it's crazy. Hear this out. My father sought and got admission for me at a school that was closest to home, Hill Grange High School, which was founded and run by the redoubtable Mrs. Sophie Kelly, a London trained Jewish educationist and socialite famous for her proximity to local and national politicians, including Jawaharlal Nehru. It was founded in 1939, among the best schools in South Bombay. When I looked it up, it's no longer there, but the alumni include Mukesh Ambani, Rajesh Khanna, Anand Jain, Anil Ambani, and Narotam is senior to all of them, of course, by a few years. But the situation to Narotam in the school is very interesting. He's too young for his class, he does not know to speak English, and he's facing a lot of challenges. And to compound matters, I was only 6 but was admitted to class 3 by my father instead of class 1 or 2 like other kids of my age. His father initially wanted him to join class 5, but um, the headmistress, Sophie Kelly, stood her ground and got him to the 3rd standard with a promise that if he performs well, he'll be promoted to the 5th class before the year gets over. And just to get through school, the 3rd, 4th standard, his father was smart enough. He was the only hire, so the both parents would just dote on him, spoil him like crazy. But also, they were smart enough to employ a private tutor. The same teacher would come after school to home to teach him, so he could be up to speed with the other students. Eventually, time proved to be the best healer. As the months passed, I started getting better in my studies and my social interactions. The growth curve, and here's what the highlight I wrote. The growth curve was steeper for him. I love curves like this. I need to look for them for myself, but it's crazy, the growth curve he has had. A quality that he liked about his Bapuji was compassion. And his Bapuji had a very lasting impact in his life. Bapuji is the adopted father. Um, Compassion was another one of his exceptional qualities. I never saw him being unreasonable with anybody, including those he helped financially. He never made them feel obliged for the help he provided. Being religious, he would spend 2 months every year in spiritual contemplation at a family bungalow we had built in Vrindavan. An interesting aspect that inspired him as from his father, which helped his business a lot, is something I want to discuss more with you. I've always lived by the simple philosophy that he taught me. You must be honest, do your job, be fair and compassionate to everyone, and leave the rest to God. Another highlight I have is you have to understand that even if I earn 10% less, I'm providing for the livelihood of the dozens of people who work for us. It is not only about making money, but also about looking after your employees. Now, his Bapuji was really ethical and honest, and there's a practice back then called Vyaj Badla that he did not use his surplus money for. It was the surplus money in a business because cotton was a 9 month year cycle. The 3 months, the surplus amount was given out to speculators to trade, and that would earn interest. But his Bapuji was not subscribing to that at all. And he said, you have to understand that even if I earn 10% less, I'm providing for the livelihood of the dozens of people who work for us. It is not only about making money, but also about looking after employees. Vyaj Badla was okay in his book as long as you employed surplus capital for the short term, where you could make a bit more money than what the banks provided, but not as a primary source of living. For the same reason, he was against making a living out of the interest earned on one's inheritance or the earning by renting out property. The only money that is worth making is the money made from hard work, was something that he always told me. My thinking about setting up a large enterprise and employing lots of people was probably subconsciously shaped by my father's philosophy about life and work. Another bit about something that he observed from his Bapuji was the social interaction response. Now, I told you in the hierarchy, they were at the third rung. So, when they would go to weddings and they had family members who had married up the ladder as well, people would just do a hi bye sort of a thing with them or they would ignore him. And this was something that rubbed off Bapuji in the wrong way. And when he would be back from weddings or events, he would tell to his wife, um, and Narotam would overhear these conversations. And here's why it inspired him to have that sort of an ambition. Part of the reason, the other part I'll tell you as well. I think I was subconsciously driven by the desire to raise the status of my family. In our daily lives, we were surrounded by wealthy and successful people, and I was constantly reminded of our relative inadequacy. We were at best a family of moderately successful traders. We were looked down upon by those who were wealthier and more successful, especially at community gatherings. My father would talk about being dismissed with a polite hello or even ignored at religious functions. On several occasions, I overheard him talking to my mother about these hurtful experiences. I believe all these incidents I believe all these incidents contributed to my single mindedness to succeed at everything I did, even at a young age, and to gain respect for my family. Another bit was his proximity to the Bajaj family. The house they lived in was sandwiched by in two floors by the Bajaj family, which started off with, of course, the Jamnalal Bajaj family, or I think it was GD Bajaj, who was a prime donor of Mahatma Gandhi, and this were the immediate descendants, and so they lived an extremely luxurious life. And because they were sandwiched right in between them, he got to see what it was like to live a luxurious life first-handed. So both of these were really early inspirations for him to be as ambitious as he is going to be going forward. I finished at the top of the class in the final board examination with distinction in physics, chemistry, and mathematics. It was profoundly satisfying, especially considering where I started from. This is him in his final year in school. Um, you know where he started at third standard, right? Hindi medium school boy in an English medium school. Um, Having kids way ahead of him in terms of age, physical abilities, and he has to do a lot of catching up to. And by third and fifth grade, he just has a terrible time. The home tutors help him level up, but by the time he comes till the 10th grade, he really blossoms into a really smart kid. I finished at the top of the class in the final board examination with distinctions in physics, chemistry, and mathematics. It was profoundly satisfying, especially considering where I had started. But when he gets into college, he completely has like a cultural shock, and he just drifts. He becomes like a chill guy. Goes around with friends, smokes, gets drunk and all that, and barely attends class. And one of the few times that I did attend class, the professor threw me out for being a nuisance and disturbing her. She also told me not to attend her class again, and I never went back. I was such a fixture in the canteen that some started calling me a canteen cockroach. And here's a quote that I remember from Founders Podcast. If you haven't checked out David Senda's Founders Podcast, please do. That has inspired me to do this format. And he says, if you want to understand the entrepreneur, study the juvenile delinquent. In this phase, in his PUC times or his 11th and 12th, he is a juvenile delinquent, just going around creating a ruckus. But after this, and he still sails through remarkably because of his smartness, despite um, studying and drifting under in the periphery of the system and being in the canteen, he still ends up scoring really well, because of which he gets through the most prestigious chemical engineering college at that time, called UDCT. Today it's called, I think, ICT, in Mumbai, a world-renowned chemical engineering college, which was one of the most prestigious chemical engineering colleges in the country back then. And its alumni roster includes some of the India's best known chemical engineers and scientists, including Raghunath Mashlekar and Manmohan Sharma, and a veritable who's who of India's petrochemical and pharma industries. Names like Mukesh Ambani of Reliance Industries, K.K. Garda of Garda Chemicals, Ashwin Dani of Asian Paints, K. Anji Reddy of Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, and Madhukar Parekh of Pidilite. And all of this, now, of course, IIT Mumbai was at the top, but his parents did not want to leave him at all, even to go and live in a hostel. And that is why his option became the next best in the country, which was UDCT, which he got accepted in. Um, and he had this philosophy of, I always want the best for myself. And you will see this throughout his life in the way he lives and the way he moves around as well. And my highlight was, what a fantastic attitude to have. And even at UDCT, he was not like a serious student, okay? His father would give him a very generous allowance, so he would always go around with friends, with movies, trips, or whatever, or smoke and do stuff like that. So he wasn't really a serious student. And he says, my father's generosity also helped. Happy with my performance at Elphinstone, which is the where he did his 11th and 12th. He had increased my daily allowance and gifted me an ambassador car, which I drove to college every day. I was one of the few students at UDCT who enjoyed this privilege. When lectures started getting monotonous, we would bunk college and go back to my old haunts in South Bombay, places like Napoli and Volga, for jam sessions. And my highlight is like, what? A politician's car for a kid who's just started his engineering degree? Hmm. So you can see his dad's affluence is rising, and his dad is really doting on this one son, which is his hire. Out of his 4 years at UDCT, if there's one thing he learned, it was this. I particularly enjoyed the analytical approach to problem solving. These were the biggest takeaways from my 4 years of engineering. I still revel in looking at a problem from various angles before arriving at a solution. Subjects like logic, economics, and social behavior were amongst my favorites. All his batchmates would either go to abroad. This was the time when India was just beginning to see the brain drain, where students would move to US for their master's degree, or they would join a MNC company in India. He chose neither of them. I had decided to stay back in Bombay and start my own business. You wasted a seed that could have benefited someone else, is what his favorite professor at UDCT told him. I disagreed with his assessment. My 4 years of UDCT were extremely productive, and I benefited from them tremendously. 4 rigorous years in a chemical engineering college prepare you for more than running a chemical plant. They help you learn to think logically and laterally, understand intricate processes, and solve complex problems. He further says that what I learned at UDCT had a significant role to play in everything I did thereafter in life, from the transformation of our family's cotton trading business, which we'll get to the setting up of Gujarat Ambuja and its success over the years. College does have such a formative impact. So don't miss out on college. Please don't drop out. That is why I'm doing this. While he was in college, he was drifting away, but he did something very interesting, which he'll continue throughout his life. He was cultivating minds smarter than him, way more elder than him, and building these relationships, getting mentorships and advice. Um, and one of them was Mr. Chidambaram, um, who was the father of one of his friends, and he would constantly observe him when he would be over at his friend's house. And he had this to say about Mr. Chidambaram. Watching him work was a masterclass in management. His integrity, Professionalism and ability to keep himself and the university above politics taught me a lot. He was a registrar of Bombay, the universities of Bombay, and he could see from observing Mr. Chidambaram a lot of these, and he cultivated him as a mentor for a long time, and did, of course, pay off for him as well. Despite his engineering degree, he had a very clear mindset. He joined his family business reluctantly. He wanted to start off on his own, but he took advice of a family friend. A family friend I respected told me bluntly, you cannot set up a business from scratch where your family has no connection or working knowledge. You should first join your family business and then do everything else later. You do not have much capital, so join the family cotton business. Use your skills to make it more profitable and then look to do other things you're passionate about on the side. When I told him that there was no future in cotton, he said, is where your skills will come into play. Your challenge will be to revive the business in a bad environment. It was a piece of advice that made a significant impact on me, something that has remained with me all my life. In the market, he's probably the only one that has an engineering degree, studied in an English medium school, and still decided to join the family business. So, a lot of people, a lot of senior traders also respect him. I know this is going to get a little longer, but it's okay. I want to go through my highlights. So please accommodate with me, okay? Let's go. Because he was an engineering student, studied in English medium school, he already stood out in the cotton trading business. And he hadn't taken a job but joined back his family business. All made him stand out in the trading business already. Because he had an chemical engineering degree, he spoke in English, studied in English medium school. Um, he stood out for not taking up a job and joining the family business in the cotton trading community. And one fine day, he ran into a friend who introduced him to another friend, and whose father was a big cotton trader. And that's where he gets to have his first order from this trader called Mr. Ratansi. And it's very interesting. Very early on, he has an ability to ask for an order. It's like, give me an order for 100 bales and let me prove you that I can deliver it to you and give you good service. And he gets his first order. He continues this throughout his career, where he just asks for business. And like this one, right? He goes and meets Mr. Ratansi. He's impressed, seeing this boy not join a corporate or go to abroad for his masters, and instead join his family business. And they both hit it off. And he just says, please give me an order. In the conversation, he says, please give me an order for 100 bales and assess my ability to service it. He agreed to give me a chance and wrote down the details of the quality of cotton that he wanted on a sheet of paper. And that's how he starts building his own roster of clients for his family's cotton trading business. And quickly, he says, I quickly mastered the buying process, um, which was what he was helping these big traders do, to buy the cotton from him instead of importing it from across the world or to buy it from other established houses. He would instead find a way to get them to buy from him. My mantra even then was to be very efficient and timely in our supply and to keep our costs down to a minimum. Their fabric sold at a premium, Mr. Ratan sees. Their fabric sold at a premium, so they paid the best price for the cotton. My profits virtually doubled every year. It's just amazing. He has the central focus very early on the business. I want to make sure things are efficient. I want to keep my costs down. Again, the obsession of most successful founders. I've always believed that honesty and ethics pay a much higher dividend in the long run. And you will see this across in the stories. I'm reading this, I'm like, yes, being honest and playing by the rules of ethics really has a long term, profitable business impact. And the best part was that I was still in my early 20s. Even mill owners who never did business with me, like Mr. Mohanlal Piramal, who owned Pyramid Mills, would often call me for consultation and general chit chat. Because of his contacts and because of his ability to ask for orders, he was able to break a big barrier. Back then, Gujarati and Marwadi businesses in the cotton line would give businesses would buy from Gujaratis and Marwaris, and they wouldn't buy from each other. And he was able to break that and sell to big Gujarati textile firms his cotton. And that became a bridge for him. And in one such case, what happened was he ended up, like in the case of, I think, Mafatlal. which is still a big brand right now, but back then as well it was huge. Mafatlal placed an order with Narotam, and he went on a trip. And while he was on the trip, the price for the cotton kept rising. And because Narottam had mastered the buying process of Mafatlal, he was able to figure out, okay, let me buy and keep the stock because the prices are rising and he might end up paying more. And when he came back from his trip, he realized that the cotton price was really high. In fact, he was shocked to realize that Narottam had bought on his behalf. And when he confronted him and he said, listen, I bought it because I knew the prices were rising and I didn't want you to suffer when you come back in your absence. And I bought it at this price and I'm selling you at this price. If I'm not able to sell you, if you don't want it, I'll sell it in the market because prices are anyways rising, so I wouldn't make a loss. Now, what shocked Mafatlal was that despite him coming back after a month or two, Narottam charged him for the first month, at the end of the month, whatever the price of the cotton was. And the cotton price had increased significantly to a point that I think Narottam would make a loss of 50 lakh rupees. This is 80s. 50 lakh was a huge windfall. And Mafatlal couldn't realize, like, couldn't fathom why the hell are you losing 50 lakh rupees? This is huge. And Narottam really reinforcing that, you know what, I value relationships more than money, and that is why I'm letting go of 50 lakh rupees. And he still ended up charging him the same rate that was back then when he bought it. This became legendary as a story in the cotton trading community. A trader, a small time trader, letting go 50 lakh rupees of just clean profit was unheard of. And this is why when I read, like, and the best part was that I was still in my early 20s. Even mill owners who never did business with me, like Mr. Mohanlal Piramal, who owned Piramal Mills, would often call me for consultation and general chit chat, was because of his reputation being built because of incidences like these. I think they were impressed by the fact that I was an engineer from a reputed college but chose to be a cotton trader. Unlike with other brokers, they could discuss subjects like the state of the economy with me and subsequent fluctuations in the cotton prices. At the risk of sounding immodest, even at that young age, I had the ability to establish my credibility at the very first meeting with most people I met. My youth was no bar at all for people to take me seriously. This is so critical for young entrepreneurs. If you're listening right now, your youth is could be a big asset for you. Besides timely service and quality, the other big trump card in getting business from the Bombay mills in those days was the finance facility that I offered them for long term purchase of cotton. I had established a large banking facility for myself, which helped me fund the warehousing of the cotton bought by clients. This becomes one of his main assets throughout his career, ability to be creative with finance. No other small time trader were offering financing ability, but he was able to. How? Because he had nurtured Chidambaram, remember, his friend's father, um, early time during his college time, and when he was joining his family business, he wanted to have a banking relationship manager sort of a thing. So Chidambaram introduced him to a banker that he was well versed with, and that relationship led to like him getting super creative with figuring out ways to finance deals. Again, relationships run the world, and in his story you will see that again and again. um, It gave me a significant advantage over my competitors who, like my own family members, were still reluctant to use financing from banks to expand their businesses. And here's his thought about not using financing, which was the perspective that most of the cotton traders had back then. I found this attitude self-defeating. We were model clients of the bank, had never defaulted, had no pending dues, were always on time with our interest and principal repayments, and were consistently profitable. I found my family's fear of approaching the bank very irrational, and I decided to do something about it. I know I'm getting into too many details very early on in the book, but his family already had a cash credit limit of 30 lakhs back then, the family trading firm. But they were always scared to go to the bank to try and extend it to bigger amount because they were afraid that they will lose out on the 30 lakhs credit limit as well. But because Narotam understood banking to an extent and he had the gall and the confidence and the audacity, he went to the bank manager and asked him why are they not giving him a bigger credit limit. And this is where he realized that The bank manager asked him multiple questions, and he was almost at the teetering end of losing the credit limit, which is what was the fear. But then he realized what the bank manager was saying was, "Hey, listen, your family is not giving me information about what you're doing with this money. Where is it going? I'm not able to see the stock. I can't verify and cross check it. And that is why we have kept you at a bare minimum level." And just at the point where he was about to lose that credit limit, he literally confronts him saying, and he was about to cancel the credit limit when he confronts, I decided that I had to be firm with him. Have I ever defaulted on my payment? I asked him. He said no. Have I ever once overdrawn on my limit? He said no. We have never issued a bounce check either, I said. Not providing information on time cannot be the grounds for canceling anyone's facility. He said it was better to talk to his senior. So he goes to the senior that the manager points him at to, called G. N. Ranade. And G. N. Ranade is impressed by this young man, um, having a degree, working in the family business, which becomes an asset for him. Young, audacious guy, and he's able to convince him and tell him that. And what he liked was the fact that Narotam was committed to his father, and instead of taking a job or moving abroad, he decided to join the family business and show his commitment to his family, because of which he developed a working relationship with him over time. So he was asked to submit all the required documents. What is the stock? Where is it? What's happening? All of that. And he said, I submitted all the required documents regularly. I promised to that and requested him to guide me in banking as I was new to it. He was more than happy and eager to do this. You can have a cup of tea with me any day between 2 and 2:30 in the afternoon, he said. I picked up a lot of my banking knowledge from Mr. Ranade and the understanding of other markets from my new friends in the Hundi department. Back then there's a Hundi system for which banks had their own Hundi department. Not getting into that, but what I'm telling you is he has this ability to connect with seniors, use them or utilize them as resources, as mentors to understand the different paths. You will see this throughout his journey. He is not well versed in it. He finds the best person, makes them a mentor, understands and keeps the relationship, goes, meets them regularly, interacts with them, understands their business, understand what things are happening, and he develops these lifelong relationships, and they become such a turning point for him. NNPI is one example, Chidambaram is one example, Mr. Ranade is another example. With time, my warm relationship with Bank of India extended to Mr. Ranade's boss, Mr. R. S. Balshekar, Bombay Region's general manager. He was the officer who signed off on all my loans, and this relationship proved to be useful during a national strike when all banking operations had come to a standstill. I had a consignment of cotton waiting at the docks, for which I had to pay an import duty of rupees 50 lakhs. I had money in my account, but I could not access it because of the strike. As a result, I was being forced to pay demurrage, the expensive penalty that ports charge for not clearing imported consignments within the stipulated time. I went to Mr. Balshekar, who was working through the strike, and I told him about my plight. I requested him to help me withdraw my money. These were pre computer days, and he had no way to confirm if I had the necessary funds in my account. He did not even ask for my passbook when he pulled his drawer open and took out a Reserve Bank of India checkbook. He wrote out a check for the required amount. I was stunned by what he had done, the trust he had reposed in me. An RBI check is among the safest financial instrument as used only rarely. He had never done this before. I'm getting chills right now. He had never done this before, he told me. Fortunately, the strike ended after 2 days and things went back to normal. I felt a sense of pride in my ability to build relationships where people went out of their way to help me. Unbelievable. By the time he was in his early 30s, he was reasonably well off because he was able to break the Marwari and Gujarati community um, compartmentalization in the cotton trade, and he was able to get these really big names to buy cotton from him. And because cotton was also 9 month business cycle, 3 months were off season, with all of that combined, he worked only from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. on most days, so he was relatively free. He was a member of Bombay's Best South clubs, took frequent holidays within India and abroad. He loved cars and was driving a fancy car around town. Especially back then, it was extremely hard to get normal cars. Getting a fancy car was even harder, but he was able to figure it out through his friends in the State Trading Corporation that was only authorized to sell the cars back then. I loved staying in the best of hotels while on holiday or business. Once, while in London, I met Mr. Padmanabh Mafatlal. Remember the Mafatlal I spoke about? And took him out for drinks and dinner at a very fancy place. One of the things he asked me was how a cotton trader like me could afford such a lifestyle. And then when we went back to my hotel, hear this out. And then when we went back to my hotel, he was even more surprised because I was staying at the high end Four Seasons while he was at a much cheaper hotel. I liked to live well. Here's another example of him breaking in to another client. Okay, and here's how he cracks this client. Okay, he said that the companies already had enough suppliers and was not looking for anyone new. I requested him to buy 100 bales from me on trial. I assure you that it will be better than anything that you're buying right now in terms of both quality and price. You name the quality and the price and I will make good the offer. I told him, what if I ask you to supply at half the price? He said, and ask for a quality that would be impossible for you to match at that price. Imagine his call now. I told him, as an experienced professional, I don't expect you to misuse my fair offer. I'm asking you to specify the quality you want and a fair price. I'm not even bargaining. He was impressed by my confidence and gave me an order for 100 bales. I fulfilled the order in terms of quality and within the delivery deadline. He was happy. When I met him after 3 months, he declared that I must have made a loss. No, sir, I replied. I made a profit. I put in extra work and got the best quality at a good price from my supplier. A business should be a win win situation for both parties. I'm not in this business to make a loss. If you make me a regular supplier, I will make my price even more competitive. That impressed him and he made me a long term supplier. It turned out to be a very lucrative venture for me for many years. You see how he just asks for orders, and just delivers on them in a very smart and street smart way. I want to jump ahead to something which is what I've discussed with you already. My passion for befriending knowledgeable people from whom I could imbibe wisdom and insight proved to be an asset all through my career. Mr. Chidambaram, Mr. Ratan C, Mr. Arvind, Mr. Yogendra Mafatlal, and Mr. R.C. Sinha are among those whose acquaintances benefited me at various times in my career. Another big name is in this group was Mr. N. N. Pai. We have discussed N. N. Pai just at the intro, who was the chairman of Corporation Bank when I first met him. It was because of him that I met the two people who steered me towards setting up Gujarat Ambuja. Now, N. N. Pai has an amazing story by himself. Of It's interesting. Look, again, relationships run the world. Once he got in touch with Anand Pai, he continued to keep that relationship, and when he became um, the head of IDBI bank, he threw a party. Narotam threw a party for him in Bombay, and he knew a few things that NNPI uh, wasn't connected to the industrialists in Bombay, and the office of IDBI was in Bombay. So he reached out to friends to figure out, okay, whom can I invite to this party? And his friends gave a very wise advice, like do not invite the cotton traders because they wouldn't be so relevant to an empire, but invite the industrialists. They will come for him, but they may not come for you if you invite them. Mr. Pai, and he ran it through Mr. Pai, and he was really happy that he was doing all of this. Mr. Pai was happy, and I got to network with a significant number of who's who of the Bombay business world. Since Mr. Pai was now back in Bombay, I began meeting him once a week after office hours for a cup of tea. I had no specific agenda or business interest with IDBI. Still, I enjoyed these meetings because I got to learn a lot about development finance, banking, industry, and much more. I would talk to him about my business and dealings with bankers, and I always found his advice valuable. I would spend time with his senior staff members, many of whom I got to know very well. Since I was not seeking any loan, they knew I had no agenda, so they were quite open in their discussions. This is why it is so interesting to continue to maintain relationships without an agenda. In fact, what happened is because you would meet him for tea after office hours, IDBI had a committee which required an external industry person as well to give their perspective, which was the Western Committee of IDBI. So a lot of these new enterprises back then, or even medium enterprises back then, would apply for loans for IDBI, and their plans and proposals would be vetted by this committee, which Narotam was part of. And this is where he chanced upon the insight that cement as a business is huge and going to be even more bigger. I told you about the rung, right? Here's something we come back to again, and his ambition to climb up the rung. But something was missing in my life. I had been a successful cotton trader for over a decade, and he's in his early 30s right now. By the early 1980s, I had made more money than I had ever imagined. But something was missing in my life, a void that I felt quite often. I wanted the recognition, respect that was accorded to industrialists in our community, but denied to traders like me. Traders, however successful, were classified with brokers and middlemen at low-level commission agents as low-level commission agents. They were never seen as wealth. Traders, however successful, were classified with brokers and middlemen as low-level commission agents. They were never seen as wealth or asset creators. This was an honor reserved for industrialists. Remember the top of the rank? Respect, esteem, and admiration were always reserved for those who had successfully set up large manufacturing companies. After being a trader for more than a decade, I longed for that kind of respect. Our cotton businesses was well established by now, and I spent only a few hours on it every day. The rest of my day was spent with family or in my other interests like the work of the IDBI Western Committee and meeting people I had befriended in various areas of business and banking. It was a way of life I'd gotten used to over the years, and I was loath to change it. This was how his routine was after 10 years. He was relatively free. Mr. Khan stood out among industrial development minded bureaucrats because he passionately believed in creating industrialists out of small entrepreneurs rather than just supporting established industrialists. Mr. Khan was the one that Anandpa introduced him to. So Anandpa introduced Mr. Khan to Narotam after they landed in Ahmedabad, and here's how Mr. Khan was as a person. Mr. Khan stood out among industrial development minded bureaucrats because he passionately believed in creating industrialists out of small entrepreneurs rather than just supporting established entrepreneurs. And he did that. In fact, Narotam was one of his biggest case studies, success stories as well. And then there was Karsanbhai Patel as well. Maybe I'll do an episode on him sometime later. His initial plan was to do it in UP, but then because of scenarios, it moved to Gujarat. And here was the deal that he had stuck with GAIC. The project cost for the proposed 7 lakh ton cement was assessed at 80 crores, divided into 20 crores of equity and 60 crores of debt in the form of loans from development bank institutions led by IDBI. Of the 20 crore equity, the three individual promoters, the Neotas, who were his relatives, Suresh Mulani, and I, were to invest a total of 5 crores, with GIC contributing an equal amount of 5 crores. The rest of the capital was to come from a public issue or IPO stated 3 years later. The eventful shareholding was supposed to be GIC 26%, promoters 25%, and the public 49%. This is how they had structured the entire company at the start. As I took on the challenge, I felt that the confidence I developed over the previous decade running my profitable cotton business, networking with a number of successful mill owners, and serving on the Western Committee of IDBI was not enough to fight my nervousness. The line separating self confidence and self doubt was indeed fragile. My note for the highlight is even the best of us get nervous. This is a different industry, different state, at a big scale risk, and he is feeling that sense of nervousness. The earliest life-changing decision I made was to give up cotton trading for good. I felt I should not be running two businesses at the same time. The new project would require my full attention. So he gives back his cotton business to the other part of his family to take care of, and he completely devotes his time to Gujarat Ambuja, um, because of the self doubt that he had that I can't run two businesses. Full attention to one thing. That's the note I have put on for this highlight. The good part was that 1982 was a great year to get into cement for a newcomer like me. Mrs. Gandhi, Indira Gandhi, Mrs. Gandhi's government had finally decided to initiate the long pending reform of decontrolling cement, albeit only partially. For the first time in several decades, cement manufacturers were allowed to sell cement in the open market after meeting the levy obligation of supplying 66.6% of the production to government agencies. I thought of it as an auspicious beginning. Little did I realize that it would also lure dozens of new entrepreneurs like me from across the country to get into the cement business. By the end of 1980s, the installed capacity for cement in the country would more than double to 61 million tons. It brought with it a whole range of new problems. Now, like I told you, he spotted the cement trend early on, and yes, in that 3 years, he was not the only one that spotted the trend, but he was one of them that rode through the trend. And if you study Charlie Munger, you realize he says that hop on a trend and ride it till the very end. Narotam did just that, and in this story, we will see that very evidently. He caught the right trend, and when he caught the right trend, he was not the alone person that noticed it. A lot more people noticed it, and they all jumped in as well. But observe his execution, observe his efficiency, and observe his creative ability to finance and advertise later on. and his ability to have relationships across the spectrums just create a Lollapalooza effect called Ambuja Cement that you and I have heard of growing up as kids. I was in two minds on whether we should change the name of the company. When I told my father about it, so they did not have the license for a cement company. It would take a while. So a shortcut that was suggested was, why don't you buy a defunct cement company's license? And that company's name was Ambuja. The full name must have been the name of that was Ambuja Cement. And so he checked with his dad, should I name it or should I change the name too? But here's what his dad replied. I was in two minds on whether we should change the name of the company. When I told my father about it, he reminded me that Ambuja was another name for goddess Lakshmi. Why do you want to change the name? Destiny has brought it to you, he told me. It was a good piece of advice. We later added Gujarat to the name to indicate our partnership with GIIC, calling ourselves Gujarat Ambuja. I think that was a very smart move, considering that it would just appease a lot of people and make his life easier in Gujarat, in the government circles especially. It must be mentioned here that I deliberately stayed away from super achievers and professionals. This is him on hiring, okay? This is his insight about hiring, and it's very to the ground, smart approach. It must be mentioned here, and it contradicts his pedigree of education. It must be mentioned here that I deliberately stayed away from super achievers and professionals with fancy degrees from high profile universities in India and abroad while recruiting. Attrition was a big problem in cement companies as executives changed jobs frequently in search of better earnings and designations. I plan to build a team of hardworking professionals from ordinary Indian universities who were prepared to give their best in an environment that encouraged them to think creatively and dream big. That was my management style. Recruit competent professionals, trust their judgment, and back them wholeheartedly. Even if mistakes were made in some instances, more often than not, I discovered that people gave their best when they were unfettered by the fear of failure. Mr. Bhandari, Mr. Bhandari's innovative approach to finance was also crucial to our early fundraising efforts. At that time, Mr. Bhandari was an early recruit. At that time, only SBI, State Bank of India, would provide loans for manufacturing companies. When we approached them with our project, their attitude was one of conden- when we approached them with a project, their attitude was one of condescension. Leave your papers here and we will look into it. That was what an official told us. We decided to approach my banker from the cotton trading days, Bank of India. Not only were they grateful for the opportunity, but they also put together a consortium with Dena Bank and Bank of Baroda. For the first time in the history of corporate India, we raised a project loan from a consortium of three mainstream nationalized banks, Bank of India, Dena Bank, and Bank of Baroda. Again, creative ability to finance his deals and his companies and his projects from the early on. Amazing. Again, another bit about Banya Buddhi. And a lot of people call it stereotype, which is what he addresses here. So I want to double click on it, not just for you, but for me as well. Some call it a stereotype, but I'm a firm believer in the idea that most Marwaris possess an intangible asset that we call Banya Buddhi, or the trader's mindset. It is one of the main reasons for our success and as businessmen over the centuries. Bania refers to the trading or merchant class, while Buddhi is a Sanskrit term with a variety of meanings associated with the mind, including intellect, thinking, wisdom, and reasoning. In my interpretation, Bania Buddhi, which every Marwari kid picks up early, is the Bania way of thinking about handling money and spending it. It is the trait that we have inherited from an unbroken line of forebears, all of whom were merchants and traders. It is this Banya Buddhi that has always driven my thinking, both as a trader and now as a cement entrepreneur. When he was setting up a cement plant, I should read this as well for you. The first thing I did when we started working was to estimate the cost involved in setting up the plant and day-to-day operations after that. I found that cement manufacturing involves 40% capital cost and 40% energy cost. If we had to succeed as a company, we would have to be singularly focused on keeping these costs under control. Again, remember the insight. Gentlemen, watch your costs. Also in Gujarat, we would be up against long established competitors whose plant value would have been written down to a bare minimum, making the cement much cheaper. It meant setting up a plant to produce the best quality cement at the least possible cost in the shortest possible time. It was a corporate mantra that served us well over the years. Now, the shortest possible time is something he picked up from Dhirubhai Ambani, which I think two of his biggest inspirations that he really picked it up from the ideas and tried to imitate it was one of them was Dhirubhai Ambani, which will keep coming in the book again and again. He was new to the cement industry altogether. And one of the traits that he had that set him apart very early on was he would always give the benefit of doubt to an upcoming person, to a new startup or a new company that was being formed. And whenever he had to work and give orders or take support or consultation, whatever, he would compare the established player in that space with somebody that had just come up, and he would almost always give the order to the up and coming or a new person because he felt that they would have the drive to really deliver, to customize it according to his requirement versus an established player who would take their own sweet time, have their own nakras and all of that, and be also expensive at the same time. Luckily, the Thapar company, Crompton Greaves, was planning to get into the same business at that time. They heard about us on the market, and their MD, Mr. K.K. Noria, came and met me personally saying that they were getting into making high tension motors. They needed it for the cement factory. He offered to supply it to us at the half the price, and within 6 months, this was music to my ears. I was shown their plant and I decided to take a risk and give them the order. After all, they were a very reputed company. It proved to be the right decision. Their equipment never gave us any problem and they kept to the promised schedule. Something similar happened when I had signed the joint sector agreement GIC a year earlier. An official there told me that they had a system of dual signatures for all checks beyond a certain amount. One from the company side and the other from GIC. I told him in that case I would have two of my people sign the check. He said that was not acceptable. One signature had to be from GIC's side. I told him it was impossible to run a large project with this kind of a rule. His point was that this was the established system and we had to follow it, implying that we had no choice in the matter. I was exasperated and told him GIC could be the sole signatory in that case and should take responsibility for all payments. You either take full responsibility and be accountable or allow me to do my job. You can question me or you do it and I will question you. You have to decide. I told him. Not used to this kind of straight talk, he immediately backed off. I was told that later that Gujarat Ambuja was the only company in the stable of joint ventures that was allowed to sign its own checks at the project stage. For me, it was always a matter of principle. If something was not right in principle, I would not agree to it. He has this way of having his way. Like I told you, right? Like his daughter told us, his doctor would say, the only time that I would have my way with him was when he was under general anesthesia. This is true. Setting up a cement factory requires more land than most industries. Because of the limestone mines, three separate parcels of lands are needed. One for the plant and office buildings, the second for employee housing located some distance away because of the dust and other noxious emissions from the plant, and the third and the biggest parcel for the limestone mines. Our total requirement was determined at around 225 acres, of which 100 acres of government owned wasteland had been transferred to us in the early stages of land acquisition. This is the first plant that he's talking about here. Dust is one of the biggest reasons for frequent plant breakdowns in India. If everything went as per plan, our target was to have the plant operational in 18 months, as against the 3 years that was standard in India then. Mr. Kulkarni, one of his very first recruits that stays for the rest of his career at Ambuja Cements. Mr. Kulkarni, with his years of experience of installing cement plants, had set this deadline. As per our calculation, at an annual inflation rate of 10%, we would save as much as 6 crores if we cut down the installation time by a year. I had long been inspired by Mr. Dhirubhai Ambani's example of setting up manufacturing plants in as short time as possible. Like him, we were going to strike our own path and set our own standards rather than follow the rules set by existing manufacturers. I never allowed to be constrained by the yardstick of the past, either in cotton trading or in setting up cement plants. In my book, everything that was deemed for the conventional way of doing things was up for questioning and review. Beyond the monetary savings, the shorter deadline helped set the tone for the future. It instilled a sense of mission, urgency, discipline, and purpose in each one of us in our small team. Of course, the speed of installation and cost consciousness would not be at the expense of technology or quality of work. I was a believer in using the best of technologies, negotiating it down to the lowest possible price, and getting the best people to run it. Remember, this is Banya Buddhi on steroids, by the way. And yes, we see Dhirubhai Ambani's impact on it. It will continue throughout his journey. Now, the first recruitment he had made, who was supposed to run the cement plant and see through everything, quits because of a tussle between them. I wouldn't get into it, but now the entire weight of running the cement plant comes on his shoulders squarely. And here's what he says: I myself was only 34, and my complete lack of experience in setting up cement plants in that sense proved to be advantageous. Remember, your youth, your naivety is an advantage. At this point, he has just barely visited one cement factory in his life, and now he has to run one. Imagine this complexity, and he's still saying it was advantageous for him. When needed, though, I made sure that we recruited the best of senior professionals. Another approach in his leadership was abdication. My thinking was that if cost had to be controlled, it seemed absurd for engineers to check back with their seniors on every little decision. The time lost in consulting seniors would be far more expensive than the money lost due to any errors they would make. The freedom to make decisions came with the occasional risk of failure. I was okay with that. Failure, I've always believed, is valuable as an experience. It is the first step to eventual success. Another bit of him abdicating a large part of his leadership was let a man set his own target, provide him with the freedom and authority to do it in his own way, and the work will become a mission instead of you setting targets. He has a very nice way of looking at targets, which is very contrarian and something that I found very interesting. I put in place guidelines for our dealings with vendors and suppliers. First, in our price negotiation, it was important not to squeeze them dry, but to leave something on the table that made them happy. They would never walk away feeling discontented if they made a profit that was commensurate with their effort. Only this would incentivize them to give us their best. I learned this from my father. Fairness is the key to sustaining long term businesses. To, su- I learned this from my father. Fairness is the key to sustain long term relationships with buyers and sellers. And when you go beyond that and do something extra, they will also reciprocate. Most of all, they will not cheat you. 90% of people cheat you because they feel that they have not got a fair deal. Secondly, while we had to be strict on quality and deadlines, we made sure they were paid before time as a matter of routine. This was important for their cash flow and created a stress free working environment for them. This ran contrary to the prevailing practice among Indian companies where vendors routinely found their way through a thicket of company bureaucracy over long periods to get paid. It invariantly led to them cutting corners and affected the quality of work. I'm proud of the fact that I never came across or even heard about a single vendor who cheated us during my time at Gujarat Ambuja. We never took a vendor to court or sought to enforce the liquidated damage clause in our contracts. Occasionally, we even helped our contractors with funds and extended deadlines when they were not able to meet their commitments for genuine reasons. It helped create a congenial and pleasant work atmosphere, which proved vital in our race to meet our ambitious targets. In time, we came to be known as the best cement company to work with, because of which we were able to command the best terms and price. Another bit that he learned from his father was transparency, and this is a highlight that just loves it. All our company transactions should be legal and transparent without any shortcuts. Even if we lost money, it sent a strong signal to everyone handling finance that all our dealings, big and small, should be above the board. Clear and transparent period. That's my highlight. Always be clear and transparent in your accounts and your finances, especially. I always believe that in leading from the front, setting an example of the principles and work practices I preached in the company. I deliberately stayed in the smallest room at our staff hostel whenever I was in Kodinar, where the first plant was established, and refused to have a fancy office made for me, preferring to work long hours from the boardroom. I even gave up on my love for luxury foreign cars in favor of a simple white Premier Padmini, lest my colleagues think that I was extravagant with company money while preaching frugality to others. I drove the same car well into the 1990s, even after we became financially prosperous, and it indeed became a bit of a problem for others. Newer and better cars were being launched in the market, but none of my senior colleagues could even think of upgrading simply because the boss was still driving a basic Padmini, Premier Padmini. Eventually, I realized I was being unfair to everyone and upgraded to a fancier set of wheels, which is when others started buying more modern and bigger cars. The note I've written here is because do it because the business needs it, but it also reminds me of something that Varghese Kurian said in the Amul episode, episode number 68, was that one way of life means you need to let go of the other way of lives, and you have to mold and adapt to this way of life. And you can see that in the Premier Padmini example here. I find it very hilarious. Another example of him, again, choosing young, up and coming companies to take a risk on was when they were trying to launch for the IPO. Now, they did their IPO at the project stage. The factory is not even fully built yet, it's still happening. So they chose, instead of an established marketing agency, they chose the very up and coming agency called CLEA. Sunil Gautam and P. Venugopal were the promoters of it, and here's what he says why he chose them. I saw this, and in their entire experience, both of the promoters of CLEA, they had just done one IPO, the PR and branding activity for. I saw this perceived weakness as a strength. It would make them work harder to build their own reputation. To ensure that they were working for us full time, I made them promise that they would not take on another IPO until ours was done. This is another habit of his when you would hire agencies, when you would hire firms, even another advertising agency that you will hire later on. He's going to take somebody that is young, that has just started out on their own, unproven, not yet fully established, and he would have a very simple arrangement with them, saying that I'm giving you the business instead of giving it to an established person, but here's my condition. You can't bunt it to a junior, or you can't farm it outside to some other smaller company. You got to be personally involved in it. And that was the edge that he had gotten versus the established companies. And also the fact that it was at a lower cost and all of that, which is given. But getting the promoter personally involved made the promoter's skin in the game really high. Another thing he observed was that when the Gujarat government is your partner, you don't have to worry. I constantly hear from startups that government is a really good partner but a terrible customer. I think you should, if you can, figure out ways to partner with the government. It leads to amazing impacts on your business and your scale.